Chapter 7 North America Physical Features. So, in this chapter, we will study about the physical features of North America. Already in the previous chapter, we have studied about its political division. In this chapter, we will study the physical features. So, what are physical features? You have already studied that the mountains, plains, plateaus, deserts, these are all valleys, these are all physical features. So, in this chapter, we will study about the physical features of North America. Great contrasts are viewed in the continent of North America. In the continent of North America, if we see the map, we can see that there are many differences in the physical features in the continent of North America. There are a variety of landforms or physical features. So why we can view the contrasts? Because in one continent you will find various of landforms or physical features. North America has evergreen forests, snow-covered mountains, rivers, islands, lakes, gulfs, deserts, waterfalls, plains, and rugged plateaus. So this is the diversity of physical features that we see in North America. That is why here it is written that great contrasts are viewed in the continent of North America. The continent can thus be roughly divided into 4 physical divisions. So the physical features of North America has been divided into 4 physical divisions. What are they? The Western Cordillera, the Eastern Cordillera or the Appalachian Highlands, Central Plains or Prairies, the Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Plateau. So these are the 4 divisions, physical divisions of North America. We will study them in details here. So first is the Western Cordillera. The first physical feature that we will study is Western Cordillera. Cordillera is a Spanish word which means a chain of parallel mountains. So why we say Cordillera? Cordillera is actually a Spanish word which means a chain of parallel mountains. When we are talking about Cordillera, that means that particular mountain is a chain of parallel mountains. These are the parallel mountains. This I have already told you once. These are the parallel mountains, and chains of such parallel mountains are called Cordillera. The Western Cordillera is the extensive mountain system located in the western part of North America. So when we are talking about Western Cordillera of North America, it is actually the mountain system that is located in the western part. Let me show you the map. This is the map that is in your page 75. This is the physical map that has been given. You can see this is the western part of North America. So this particular brown region that you can see here, brown color region, we have already studied the colors of the physical features, how the colors are represented in map. That helps us in understanding map. So the brown color means this is mountain, and it is in the westernmost part. This is the westernmost part of North America, and this entire, from you can see from the tip till the bottom of North America, this is entirely Western Cordillera, and it is a chain of mountain system. So that is why it is called Cordillera, and since it is situated in the western part of the continent, so it is Western Cordillera. So already we came to know, we saw in the map that the Western Cordillera is located in the western part of North America. Like the Himalayas, the Western Cordillera is the young fold mountains that run from Alaska in the north to Panama in the south. So in India we have Himalayas, which is young fold mountain. Young fold mountain also, I have told you that the mountains which are recently formed, they are called the young fold mountains. So similarly, this Western Cordillera is also a young fold mountain that run from Alaska in the north to Panama in the south. So in in political chapter, political division, we have studied that here it is Alaska, this portion is Alaska, and here this this particular portion we have studied that this is Panama, Isthmus of Panama we have already studied. So this Cordillera, it runs from the north in Alaska. From here it starts till bottom, that is in the southern part, that is till Panama. As I have already told you that it runs from top to bottom of North America, that is from north Alaska till south, here it is Isthmus of Panama. So it is covering almost It is covering the entire western part of the continent. That is the entire this western cordillera is covering the entire western part of the continent from top to bottom. So this is its location of western cordillera, that is from Alaska in the north to Panama in the south. The chain of parallel mountains occupies nearly 1/3 of the total area of North America. So this particular mountain range, that is the western cordillera, it covers almost 1/3 area of North America. This is entire area of North America. 1/3 portion of this entire area is covered by western cordillera, because you already know that it runs from north to south. So 1/3 area of North America is covered by western cordillera. The western cordillera has roughly 3 parallel ranges. It is about 6,500 km long and about 1,600 km broad. So the western cordillera, it has total 3 parallel ranges, and its length is 6,500 km, means from north to south its length is, the length of western cordillera is 6,500 km, and when we see the breadth of or the width of western cordillera, it is 1,600 km. The height of these mountain ranges varies between 2,500 meter and 4,000 meter above sea level. So this, you already know that any physical feature, you say it mountain, plateaus, plains, these are every time measured from the sea level, that is the surface of the water. So the mountain ranges in North America, they vary between 2,500 meter and 4,000 meters. So in those 3 parallel ranges we will get mountains which range starts from 2,500 meter till mountains which range whose ranges starts from 4,000 meter above the sea level. The highest mountain range in the western cordillera is the Rocky Mountain, that is located towards the east. So the highest mountain range in western cordillera, again I am saying you, this is the highest mountain range, not one particular mountain, but it is one particular range. This is one particular range that has many mountain peaks in it. So the highest mountain range in western cordillera is the Rocky Mountains, which is located to the east. Here east does not mean the east of North America. Here east means the east of western cordillera. Let me show you the map. Here you can see this is the Rocky Mountain. It is clearly shown in the map. So this is the highest mountain range of western cordillera, and as you see, this is the entire western cordillera. This is the western part of western cordillera, this is the eastern part of western cordillera. So Rocky Mountain is towards the east of western cordillera. So this is Rocky Mountains. This range makes up the greater part of Cordillera. So Rocky Mountain range, this forms the greater part of western Cordillera. The other important ranges in the western Cordillera are, so other than Rocky Mountain, there are other important ranges in western Cordillera. What are they? The Alaska range, which lies in the north. So as we see this map of North America, here we can see, here it is the Alaska range, here it is written the Alaska range. So Alaska range, which is in the north of North America. Then is the Cascade range lying in the middle, the coastal range that lies along the coast, the Sierra Nevada that lies inland, means that is inside parallel to the coastal range, and the Sierra Madre that lies to the south. So the Sierra Nevada, it lies inland, and then there is the Sierra Madre which lies to the south, that is stretching through the length of Central America. So in the map you can find out all these important mountain ranges of western Cordillera. See this, do you know? Mount McKinley, that is 6,193 meter, the highest peak in North America, is in the Alaska range. So this is a peak. Again I am saying you again that there is a difference between range and mountain peak. One single line that I have shown you, these are the ranges. This is one range, this is another range, this is another range. So these are the ranges. These ranges have certain peaks, means one single mountain. That is one single mountain. So if I say you that this is the Alaska range, this is the Alaska range, that means it has Mount McKinley which is the highest mountain, highest peak of North America. So Mount McKinley is the highest peak in North America. You can see here it is given in this map. Here it is the Alaska range that I have already shown you. This particular black triangle, it is Mount McKinley. You can see in your books properly, and as I told you, find out these mountain ranges, find out in your this physical map. It is given in the book, or you can refer to the atlas to find out these mountains. Then you can these mountain ranges, then you can know the exact location of these particular mountain ranges. The next physical feature is the Eastern Cordillera or the Appalachian Highlands. So let me show you in this physical map first, which is the Eastern Cordillera. See, it is Eastern Cordillera or the Appalachian Highlands. Here it is written Appalachian Mountains. That is same, it's Eastern Cordillera or Appalachian Highlands. So why it is called Eastern Cordillera, you came to know till now. By now you came to know that is because it is in the eastern part of North America. This is the eastern part of North America. That is why it is called Eastern Mountains, Eastern Highlands, or the Appalachian Mountains. This is the west, so it was called Western Cordillera, and this is the east, so it is called Eastern Cordillera. The Appalachian Highlands or the Eastern Cordillera are situated along the eastern side of North America that I have already shown you. The Appalachians are the old and rugged mountains which were once very high. So this is the difference between Western Cordillera and Eastern Cordillera. You already studied that Western Cordillera, they were young fold mountains, but Eastern Cordillera or the Appalachians, they are the old mountains. They are the old fold mountains. Here it is written that they are the old and rugged mountains. Rugged means they have become rough since they are old fold mountains. So because of the erosional action of the agents such as wind, rain, sun, so that has these all erosional agents have turned this mountain into rugged mountain which were once very high. Means when they were young they were very high, but because of these erosional agents these mountains have now become rugged, and that means their size have now decreased. Now the average height of this mountain varies from 1000 meter to 1800 meter. You already studied in Western Cordillera that the mountain ranges varied from 2500 to 4000 meter, but here you can see how much the height of Eastern Cordillera has decreased because of those erosional agents, that is from 1000 meter to 1800 meter. This is another difference in between Western Cordillera and Eastern Cordillera. The Appalachians are 2575 kilometer long chain of mountains. Hence this acted as a barrier between the Atlantic coast and the interior of North America in the past. So previously when it was actually very high, so at that time, means when it was young, it acted as a barrier between the Atlantic coast and the interior of North America. Here you can see here it is the Appalachian Mountain. So it acted as a barrier in between the Atlantic coast. Here it is the Atlantic Ocean. So obviously this is the Atlantic coast, and this is the interior of North America. Interior means the inside of North America, and this is acting as a barrier, or you can say that this is acting as a wall in between the coast of Atlantic coast and the interior of North America. So this acted as a barrier between the Atlantic coast and the interior of North America in the past. This stretched from the valley of St. Lawrence River down through most of the eastern United States. So this is the extension of Eastern Cordillera given, that is from the valley of St. Lawrence River till most of the eastern United States. Here is the St. Lawrence River. Here is the St. Lawrence River. So here, from here till this is the eastern, some of the countries of eastern United States. Here we know, you can see the political map. Here it's the United States of America. So till this much is that is the eastern states of America. Till this much from St. Lawrence till eastern states. There, this is the extension of Appalachian Mountains. there are a number of short rivers that rise in the Appalachian Mountains and flow into the Atlantic Ocean. So there are very short flowing rivers that originates from the Appalachian Mountains, and they go and flow into or drain themselves into the Atlantic Ocean. These swift flowing rivers give rise to waterfalls and rapids as they flow over the edge of the plateau. So these swift flowing rivers, they turn into or they give rise to waterfalls and rapids. So when these swift flowing rivers, they fall down from plateau, that gives rise to waterfalls and rapids. Rapids are particular you can say that particular water of the river where you see the speed is so high that the water becomes white in color. The water seems to be white in color. So those are the rapids where the river flows very fast. So those are the rapids. So these swift flowing rivers, they give rise to waterfalls and rapids as they flow over the edge of the plateau. That is, edge is the end part of the plateau. From there, if the river falls down, so obviously waterfalls rises from there. Many of these rivers provide suitable sites for the development of hydroelectricity. So already we studied that these swift flowing rivers, when they fall down from the edge of the plateau, it becomes waterfalls. So these waterfalls helps in generation of hydroelectricity. Some of these rivers have cut gorges. So these rivers, they run so deep that because of their erosional action, gorges were formed, which provide passage for important rail and road routes. So these gorges help in the construction of important rail and road routes. Then next we will study the next physical feature, that is the central plains or the central lowlands or the prairies. So central plains, also known as central lowlands, they are also known as the prairies. The central plains or the prairies lie between the Appalachian Mountains in the east and the Rocky Mountains in the west. So the central plains or prairies, they lie between the Appalachian Mountain. We have already studied Appalachian Mountain is in the east of North America and the Rocky Mountain is to the west of North America. And so that middle portion of Appalachian Mountain and Rocky Mountain is central plain or the prairies. So here eastern part of North America has this eastern Cordillera and the western part has this Rocky Mountains, and in between them this green yellow region that you can see, this is the central plains or the prairies. Prairie is the French word which means meadow or grassland. So prairie is actually a French word which means meadow or grassland. This is the picture of the prairie. You might have come across this word in your GK books or some other books. Prairies, that is called the grassland, meadow or grassland. The North American central lowlands stretches from the Arctic Ocean in the north to the Gulf of Mexico in the south. So this lowland, the central lowland, stretches from, here you can see the map, that is from Arctic Ocean in the north. Here it is Arctic Ocean. So from Arctic Ocean, this is the northern portion, till here, that is Gulf of Mexico, till here. This is the entire central lowland region from Arctic Ocean in the north till Gulf of Mexico in the south. The prairies are about 6,000 km long and about 2,000 km broad. The prairies are flat and humid in the east but are quite high, that is almost about 500 meters, and comparatively dry in the west. So there is a great difference between the eastern part of the prairies and the western part of the prairies. The eastern part of the prairies, they are flat and humid. It is moisture. Humid is the atmosphere, or you can say the air has moisture content in it. That is the eastern part of the prairies. Whereas the western part of the prairies, they are a bit high, that is 500 meters, and they are dry. They are comparatively dry in comparison to the eastern part of the prairies. So there is a difference between the eastern part and the western part of the prairies. The northern part of the prairies slopes towards the Arctic Ocean, whereas its southern part slopes towards the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. So the northern part of the prairie, here I have already told you, this is the northern part. It slopes, means it gently goes down towards the Arctic Ocean, and the southern part of the prairies slopes towards Arctic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico. So this is the northern slope, this is the southern slope. Northern slope is towards Arctic Ocean, southern slope is towards Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico. This region is one of the biggest and the most fertile plains in the world. Trees are rare, that is why we say that as grassland or meadows, because trees are very rare over these prairies, except along the rivers. Except along the river course, there are no trees that you will find in these prairies, in this region. The prairies are known for their highest wheat production in the world, and that is why they are called the wheat basket of the world. The prairies, they are famous for the highest wheat production in the world, and that is why they are called wheat basket of the world. The prairies are drained by the rivers, namely the Mackenzie. So these are the rivers that you will find in the prairie region, that is Mackenzie, Mississippi, Missouri, St. Lawrence, and the Saskatchewan and the Nelson River. So if you see the map that is given in your physical map in your book or atlas, you will find these rivers that drains this prairie region. Now the next physical feature that we will study is the Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Shield. So this is the plateau region of North America. Let me show you this Canadian Shield here. You can see this Hudson Bay. The region surrounding this Hudson Bay, this is the Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Plateau. Here it is written Canadian Shield. This is the location of Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Plateau. The northeastern part of North America, centered around the Hudson Bay, is known as the Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Plateau that I have already shown you. That is the northeastern part of North America that surrounding the Hudson Bay. It is called the Canadian Shield or the Laurentian Plateau. This region occupies more than 40% of the land area of Canada. It is made up of some of the oldest and the hardest rocks in the world. Since it is a plateau region, the characteristic feature of a plateau region is the plateaus are made up of oldest and hardest rocks. They are the old land surface of the world. So that is why they have this, they are made up of this oldest and hardest rocks. The Canadian Shield is almost 600 meters above the sea level. So as we know, the plateaus, they are not so high like mountains or not so low like the plains. So then it is a bit raised, a bit its altitude, its elevation a bit high in comparison to the plains. So the plateau region, that is a Canadian Shield, is almost 600 meters above the sea level. During the Ice Age, the entire Canadian Shield was covered with thick sheets of ice. So when there was Ice Age, and that when the entire Canadian Shield, now we see that the Canadian Shield has these rocks, hard rocks, or the plain region. This is a plain region. But during the during the Ice Age, this entire region was covered with thick sheets of ice. Entire region, there were no rocks or there were no grasses. Entire region was covered with thick sheets of ice. A number of glaciers were formed. Because of these thick sheets of ice, a number of glaciers were formed out of those ice. As these glaciers moved along, they scooped out great hollows in the land. So when these glaciers were moving, they were like some kind of, they were doing some kind of erosion. So these glaciers, they were moving, and that is why when they were moving, their erosional action was that they were scooping out great hollows in the land, like they were digging holes on the land. Their erosional action was so much like that they were digging holes in the land. And that is why, because of this erosional action of the glaciers during Ice Age, today what we see is thousands of depressions were thus formed. After the glaciers melted, these depressions were filled with water, thus forming lakes. So this is a feature that we see today. During Ice Age, those depressions were formed. Depressions, I told you, that is the holes or the hollows that were formed on the land because of the erosional action of these glaciers. But after what happened, when these glaciers melted, those depressions were filled with water. And today what we see are the lakes. Let me show you in this map. Many lakes are here. These are the lakes. The blue color features that we see here, these are the lakes. Many lakes you will find. You see the map in your book or atlas, you will see many lakes are here. That is the Great Bear Lake, then Great Slave Lake, then the Lake Athabasca, then there is Lake Winnebago's And then here are the grade 5 lakes, many lakes, small, big, Lake Winnipeg, many lakes are here. You see this entire region is filled with lakes, and this is the region why this is the reason why this particular region is filled with many lakes, because these were those depressions, these lakes were actually those depressions that were formed by these moving glaciers. After these glaciers melted, these depressions were filled with water. Today we see them as lakes. Hence, North America had its Great Lakes, which form the southern boundary of the Canadian Shield. This is the Great Lakes that I told you. These are the Great Lakes. These lakes were also formed because of that particular process. That is, the movement of glaciers led to this kind of depressions, and after that, afterwards, these depressions were filled with water of the melting glaciers. So this is the southern boundary that forms the Great 5 lakes. These are the total, there are 5, they are 5 in number, and that is why they are called the Great 5 lakes of North America. So this Great 5 lakes, they form the southern boundary of the Canadian Shield. It is towards the south of the Canadian Shield, so they form the southern boundary of the Canadian Shield. There is a chain of lakes in the western and the southwestern edge of the Shield. So a large number of lakes are found in the western and the southwestern edge. This is the western and southwestern edge. You can see western, many lakes are here in the western and the southwestern edge of the Canadian Shield, and this is the southern boundary of the Canadian Shield. Many thousands of lakes you will find in this particular region. The famous freshwater lakes, so among them the famous lakes are the Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. These are actually those Great 5 lakes. We have studied those Great 5 lakes. These are the 5 lakes. What is their names? The Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. The famous Niagara Falls is located between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. The Niagara Falls, the famous Niagara Falls we have heard about. Here it is, you can see here the Niagara Falls. It is situated in between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. There are many small rivers that drain the Canadian Shield and enter the Hudson Bay. Many great rivers, they emerge from the Canadian Shield and they drain into the Hudson Bay. The Mackenzie River empties into the Arctic Ocean, and the Yukon River flows through Canada and Alaska and empties into the Bering Sea. So you see this the map, it is given in your book, or you see the atlas, you find out these rivers. Every river, they have their origin and the place or the water body in which they goes and empties themselves. Like this Mackenzie River, it empties itself into the Arctic Ocean, and the Yukon River, it flows through Canada and Alaska and goes and empties itself into Bering Sea. When you find out these rivers in the map, you can see that they are going and emptying themselves into some kind of large water body. It may be ocean, it may be sea. The St. Lawrence River is the busiest inland waterway of the region. Here it is the picture given of St. Lawrence. So here it is given, this is actually not St. Lawrence but the Mississippi River. So let me show you this, when these ships or the boats, they go and come, means they travel through these rivers. This transportation make the river the busiest river, you can say. Like you can see in this picture, this is given the ships and boats coming and going. This is a Mississippi River, but the St. Lawrence River, same action goes on in the St. Lawrence River, making it the busiest inland waterway of the region. Inland means the St. Lawrence River does not connect outside or to some other countries, but it goes on within that particular region. The transport goes on within that particular region. So St. Lawrence River is the busiest inland waterway of the region. The southwestern edge of the Canadian Shield is bounded by some lakes like Great Slave and Great Bear Lakes. Already I have shown you the Great Slave and Great Bear Lakes. You can see it in your maps also. So the southwestern edge of the Canadian Shield is bounded by these lakes, that is Great Slave and Great Bear Lakes. The Canadian Shield is rich in mineral resources like gold, silver, copper, nickel, iron and uranium.